Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly fascinating, kind of mind-blowing piece of history. We're tracing how seemingly ordinary, totally mundane agricultural investments actually set the stage for one of the most devastating global conflicts in human history. We are looking at the intricate architecture of German imperialism in the Ottoman Empire. Okay, so let's jump right into it with a question that might seem completely bizarre at first glance. How exactly did a corrugated iron cotton factory in Anatolia help pave the road to World War I? I mean, it sounds like a massive stretch, right? But stick with me, because by the end of our time together today, you're going to see exactly how these physical structures of everyday industry were literally the building blocks of a massive geopolitical war machine. To get there, we'll follow a pretty clear path. 1. The global cotton crisis. 2. Deutsche Bank enters Anatolia. 3. The Adana Cotton Project. 4. Financing the imperial machine. And finally, 5. Railroads, rifles, and war. Section 1. The Global Cotton Crisis and Industrial Vulnerability. So this might actually surprise you, but the American Civil War back in the 1860s caused what historians call the industrial world's very first raw materials crisis. Imagine being one of over 400 German textile manufacturers who suddenly woke up to realize their severe economic vulnerability. They were entirely, 100%, dependent on the United States as their single supplier for cotton. When that supply completely choked off due to wartime blockades, it sparked absolute panic among German industrialists and statesmen. Entire regional economies in Germany were quite literally at risk of collapse. They desperately needed a new, secure source for their looms just to survive the modern industrial age. There's this quote from Paul Rohrbach spoken at a colonial congress in 1902 that perfectly captures their grand solution. He said, "In the near future, we shall be free from being dependent on America for cotton, because we shall be satisfying the need for it from the areas crossed by the Baghdad Railway." This wasn't just some vague pie-in-the-sky hope. It was a targeted, urgent, strategic motive. Because they lacked the vast overseas settlement colonies that the British or the French had, German imperialists looked to the non-colonized territory of Ottoman Anatolia to fulfill their deep economic needs. Section 2. Deutsche Bank enters Anatolia and funding infrastructure. German capital moved incredibly fast to secure this foothold. In 1888, Deutsche Bank got its first concession for the Anatolian Railway. Just 4 short years later, in 1892, the line opens to Ankara. By 1896, it's extended to Konya, and by 1903, the truly monumental contracts for the Baghdad Railway, which was designed to link Constantinople all the way down to the Persian Gulf, were officially signed. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that these railways weren't just about moving passengers from point A to point B. They were effectively land bridges. Deutsche Bank utilized these massive railway concessions to crack open remote, totally virgin corners of Ottoman Anatolia. They were laying down the physical tracks for deep economic penetration. They were unlocking vast agricultural and mineral wealth that was previously entirely inaccessible to European markets. The railway was just the vanguard of a much, much larger industrial strategy. Section 3. The Adana Cotton Project and Industrial Agriculture. There's a rare, absolutely fascinating photograph from 1909 that captures the literal architectural foothold of German capitalists in Ottoman Cilicia. It shows the delivery of cotton to the Adana premises of the DLB, that's the German Levantine Cotton Company. Deutsche Bank, teaming up with other key German industrial heavyweights, founded the DLB to permanently shatter the American cotton monopoly. And they didn't just want to buy cotton on the open market. Oh no, they wanted to engineer and completely control the entire physical process of its production, literally from the soil up. To pull off this level of deep industrial penetration, they brought in some massive technological upgrades. We're talking heavy steam plows and modern threshers to replace traditional manual labor. They installed industrial-scale 70-saw gins to clean the cotton at speeds no one there had ever seen, plus mechanized presses for high-density baling. But I want you to pay special attention to the imported corrugated iron roofs used for the factory buildings. Why on earth does a specific roof matter? Well, because by importing cheap corrugated iron directly from Germany, they completely avoided paying for local Ottoman building materials. This ensured they didn't have to inject their capital into the local currency ecosystem. Every single architectural and mechanical decision was a brilliant, highly calculated financial technique to maximize profits for the German metropole. 85,000. That is the number of bales of cotton produced in the region by the 1910 to 1911 harvest. To put that in perspective, just a few years earlier in 1904, it was barely half that amount. This dramatic, super rapid jump undeniably proves that Germany's aggressive infrastructure investment and their push for commercialized, large-scale farming was a staggering economic success. Section 4. Financing the Imperial Machine and the Financial Web. So, how did this immense financial operation actually work? Let's break it down step by step. First, Deutsche Bank in Berlin would advance massive lines of credit to the DLBG's accounts. But the DLBGs still needed to move actual liquid money into the Ottoman countryside so they could lend it to the farmers who were growing the cotton. In 1904, they literally carried their capital stock in physical bullion all the way to Anatolia. To process this, exchange it, and inject it into local credit cycles, they utilized the private mansion of Gustav Christmann, a Swiss-German financier located in the port town of Mersin. From his sprawling villa, German capital was transformed into local loans, granted to everyday sharecroppers and massive landholders alike, like the prominent Sursock family. Christmann's mansion physically mediated international finance, locking local Ottoman agriculture right into German debt structures. And then we get to the true masterpiece of this financial machine, the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, or OPDA. Following an earlier Ottoman state bankruptcy, this international organization was set up to collect Ottoman taxes directly, totally bypassing the local government, to repay foreign debts. The tithes collected from these newly productive, German-irrigated cotton fields were essentially weaponized. Think about it. The tax revenue generated by the very infrastructure Germany built was funneled directly back to amortize the loans the Ottoman government owed to entities like Deutsche Bank. It was a perfectly closed loop of guaranteed resource extraction and debt repayment. Absolutely wild. Section 5. Railroads, Rifles, and War. The boiling point. This highly integrated strategy was famously termed German peaceful imperialism, and it was perfectly coordinated across every sector. Deutsche Bank handled the banking to centralize control over economic policy. The DLBG managed the agribusiness to relentlessly secure raw cotton. Massive engineering firms like Philipp Holzmann built the irrigation to increase the taxable output. And finally, armaments. Companies like Krupp and Mauser sold the weapons to create a technical and military dependency. All these distinct, separate sectors worked in total lockstep to bind the Ottoman state directly to Berlin. And honestly, it's that last sector that really turned the key from economics to full-blown conflict. Krupp artillery and Mauser rifles became the absolute cornerstone of the German-Ottoman relationship. Prussian military experts, who were originally sent simply to help reform the Ottoman army, effectively acted as intermediaries and high-level salesmen for German weapons monopolies. They translated Germany's vast infrastructural dominance into a hard, inescapable military dependency. Even Kaiser Wilhelm II himself viewed this incredibly lucrative arms trade as an inseparable part of their bilateral relations. And so we reach the historical boiling point. This vast network of so-called peaceful imperialism, the railways, those corrugated iron cotton gins, the massive bank loans, and the artillery sales, culminated in a very unpeaceful pact. On August 2, 1914, just as the Great War was igniting across Europe, a secret military alliance was signed between Germany and the Ottoman Empire. Decades of deep financial and infrastructural ties had officially and almost inevitably solidified into a pact for global war. But here is the profound, truly tragic irony of this entire historical episode. The very war that this alliance was built to wage, it immediately shattered the delicate economic network they had spent decades constructing. The outbreak of World War I, and specifically the Entente naval blockade, instantly disrupted the trade routes. Those massive yields of cotton couldn't get out to the German factories, and crucial industrial machinery couldn't get in. It exposed the extreme fragility of an empire that had allowed itself to become overly reliant on foreign capital, foreign infrastructure, and foreign technical support. The whole house of cards collapsed. Which leaves us with a really critical question for our own time. If a naval blockade could instantly shatter this vast, meticulously planned network of railways and factories over a century ago, well, how secure are the geopolitical empires being built on massive infrastructure loans and foreign resource extraction today? It's a sobering reminder that the architecture of global finance is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly fragile. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.